For years, one man convinced women across Europe that he was the son of a billionaire diamond tycoon. The luxury lifestyle looked completely real with private jets and bodyguards. But behind it all was a scam worth millions, and the deeper investigators looked, the darker the story became. A woman matched with a billionaire on Tinder. Days later, she was flying across Europe on private jets and staying in expensive hotels, but a single message suddenly changed everything. "My enemies found me, and I need your help," and you won't believe what happened next. On a private jet flying across Europe, a young woman sat beside a man she had only met a few days earlier on Tinder. Around them were bodyguards, champagne, expensive watches, and the kind of luxury lifestyle most people only ever see online. To her, everything about him looked completely real. He introduced himself as Simon Leviev, the son of a billionaire diamond tycoon. And from the moment they met, he carried himself like someone who belonged in that world. Hotel staff treated him like royalty, his phone constantly rang with business calls, and wherever he went, people seemed to know his name. But almost none of it was true. The man sitting on that jet was actually Shimon Hayut, an Israeli fraudster who would later become known around the world as the Tinder Swindler. Over several years, he convinced women across Europe to hand over enormous amounts of money, leaving many buried under debt. He continued living a life of luxury funded almost entirely by his victims. And somehow, even after being exposed internationally, arrested multiple times, and turned into the subject of one of Netflix's biggest documentaries, he still managed to walk free again and again. To understand how he pulled it off, you have to go back long before the private jets and designer suits. Shimon Hayut was born in Israel in 1990 and grew up in a fairly ordinary middle-class household. There was no billionaire family, no diamond empire, and certainly no luxury lifestyle waiting for him. However, from a young age, Hayut seemed obsessed with the image of wealth and success. He wanted people to see him as important, powerful, and connected. But instead of building that life honestly, he slowly began creating shortcuts. By his early 20s, he was already experimenting with fraud. One of the earliest known cases involved family friends in New York who allowed him to stay in their apartment. According to reports, while they were away, Hayut allegedly used stolen credit card information to fund luxury purchases, expensive travel, and even a Rolls-Royce rental. Even at that stage, the pattern was beginning to form. First, he gained trust. Then he created the illusion of wealth. And finally, once people lowered their guard, he took advantage of them. Over the next several years, Hayut moved between countries while leaving financial problems and police investigations behind him. In another early case, he reportedly convinced a woman he was secretly wealthy and waiting to receive a massive inheritance. He persuaded her to help him financially and eventually disappeared, leaving her to face the consequences alone. Authorities in multiple countries slowly began connecting the dots, and in Finland, he was eventually convicted of fraud and theft after using false identities to deceive women he had met. But prison did not stop him. If anything, it gave him time to improve the scam. At some point, Hayut realized that the most powerful part of any con was not money, but identity. If people believed the story, they would ignore almost everything else. So he created a completely new persona for himself and chose a name that instantly sounded powerful: Simon Leviev. The surname came from one of the richest diamond families in the world. Lev Leviev was a real billionaire businessman whose diamond empire was known internationally, and Simon began telling people that he was Lev's son. In reality, the family had absolutely no connection to him, but by the time most people discovered that, the damage had already been done. With his new identity in place, Simon carefully built the image that would eventually fool women across Europe. His social media was filled with private jets, luxury hotels, expensive dinners, designer clothes, and non-stop travel between major cities. Every photo was carefully chosen because every detail mattered. The goal was not just to look rich, the goal was to look believable. And then came Tinder. For Simon, dating apps were the perfect hunting ground because they allowed him to meet strangers quickly while controlling exactly how he appeared. Women who matched with him did not see a criminal or a scammer. Instead, they saw a handsome and successful businessman living an exciting international lifestyle. The experience was designed to feel overwhelming from the very beginning. Women who later spoke publicly about Simon described first dates that felt more like scenes from a movie than real life. Some were invited onto private jets within days of matching with him. One moment they were casually chatting online, and the next, they were flying across Europe beside a man surrounded by bodyguards. The speed was important. Everything moved quickly because Simon understood that excitement leaves very little room for doubt. Most people never get close to extreme wealth, so when they suddenly experience it firsthand, it becomes easier to believe whatever story comes with it. And Simon knew exactly how to use that. One of the women who became trapped in his world was Cecily F. Gelhoy from Norway. When Cecily first met Simon, he appeared to be the perfect partner. He was charming, generous, and confident, and constantly made her feel special. Their relationship escalated rapidly as luxury trips turned into an emotional attachment, and before long, Simon was messaging her constantly and talking about a future together. At first, nothing felt suspicious. In fact, that was exactly what made the scam work so well. Simon did not immediately ask for money because he first needed emotional trust. He showered women with attention, affection, and promises until the relationship felt serious. Psychologists often describe this behavior as love bombing. Then suddenly, the tone changed. According to Cecily, Simon began sending disturbing messages claiming that dangerous enemies were targeting him. He even sent photos showing his bodyguard injured and covered in blood after an alleged attack. The messages sounded panicked and urgent, and Simon claimed he could no longer use his own bank cards because his enemies were tracking his movements. He needed help immediately. Just temporary support until the situation calmed down. By that point, Cecily believed she was helping the man she loved survive a dangerous crisis, so she began taking out loans. Then more loans, and then even more. Eventually, she reportedly transferred around $250,000 to Simon Leviev. The money never came back. Instead, Simon simply moved on to another victim, while Cecily was left buried under crushing debt. The emotional damage became just as devastating as the financial loss, and she later admitted that the stress pushed her into an extremely dark place mentally. But Cecily was far from the only victim. Another woman, Pernilla Esierholm, entered Simon's life through Tinder as well, although their relationship was framed more as a friendship than a romance. Even so, the manipulation followed the same pattern. Simon surrounded her with luxury experiences, expensive trips, and the illusion of exclusivity before eventually creating financial emergencies that required immediate help. Pernilla later revealed that she gave Simon around $45,000, money she had originally saved for her own future. And as suspicion slowly began growing, Simon's personality reportedly became colder and more threatening. According to the victims, the charming businessman they first met could disappear instantly whenever he felt challenged or questioned. By this stage, many victims already felt trapped emotionally, financially, or both. Some had loans under their own names, while others still believed Simon would eventually repay them once his so-called problems disappeared. That hope kept many of them connected to him far longer than they otherwise would have stayed. However, the woman who would eventually help bring Simon down was Ayelan Charlotte from the Netherlands. Unlike some of the others, Ayelan had been involved with Simon for over a year and believed they were in a genuine long-term relationship. Over time, she reportedly gave him around $140,000, but by 2019, investigative journalists at the Norwegian newspaper VG had begun uncovering the truth behind Simon Leviev's identity and the growing number of fraud allegations connected to him. When Ayelan read the investigation, everything suddenly started making sense. But instead of confronting Simon immediately, she stayed calm and pretended nothing had changed. At that point, Simon himself was becoming increasingly desperate because the media attention was making it harder for him to continue the scam. He reportedly moved between cities while trying to avoid authorities and maintain his luxury lifestyle at the same time. Then, in a twist Simon never expected, he turned to Ayelan for help once again. He asked her to sell some of his expensive designer clothes and luxury items so he could quickly raise cash while hiding from authorities. Ayelan agreed, but instead of sending him the money, she kept it for herself. More importantly, she quietly gathered information about his travel plans and eventually passed that information to the police. In July 2019, Shimon Hayut was arrested in Greece after authorities tracked his movements through international cooperation. For the victims, it finally felt like justice was catching up to him, but the story still was not over. Hayut was extradited to Israel and convicted on fraud-related charges connected to earlier crimes. He received a 15-month prison sentence, yet despite the years of damage he had caused, he ended up serving only 5 months before being released early. The decision shocked many people following the case, because while Simon was already regaining his freedom, many of the women he deceived were still struggling with debt, bankruptcy, and emotional trauma. And somehow, almost immediately after his release, Simon returned to social media. Photos of expensive vacations, luxury hotels, and designer clothing began appearing online once again, as though nothing had happened. Even after becoming internationally known as a scammer, he continued presenting himself as a wealthy businessman living an elite lifestyle. Then, in February 2022, Netflix released The Tinder Swindler, a documentary focusing on the experiences of Cecily, Pernilla, and Aelin, while exposing the methods Simon had used for years. The film quickly became one of Netflix's most-watched documentaries and turned Simon Leviev into a globally recognized name almost overnight. Millions of viewers watched in disbelief as the victims explained exactly how the scam worked step by step. However, the public reaction became strangely divided. While many people sympathized with the women, others mocked them for falling for the scam, and some viewers even admired Simon himself for how confidently he manipulated people. Disturbingly, the internet had transformed him from a criminal into a celebrity, and Simon leaned into that attention immediately. He denied the allegations publicly, claimed the documentary was fake, and insisted he was simply a misunderstood businessman. At one point, reports even suggested he was discussing plans for a dating show, a podcast, and other entertainment projects built around his notoriety. Meanwhile, Tinder permanently banned him from its platform, and the real Leviev family publicly confirmed that Simon had absolutely no connection to them whatsoever. Their family name had been used for years to help deceive women across Europe. Yet despite global exposure, documentaries, arrests, and endless headlines, Simon Leviev somehow continued avoiding serious long-term consequences. New allegations and accusations continued appearing over the following years, and in 2025, he was detained once again in the Republic of Georgia after legal action connected him to additional fraud cases in Germany. For a moment, it seemed possible that his long run might finally be ending. But once again, the outcome became frustratingly familiar. Some legal cases reportedly faced evidentiary problems, while others became complicated by statute limitations and technical issues. Eventually, Simon Leviev was released again, continuing the same cycle that had followed him for years: arrest, legal complications, release, and perhaps the most disturbing part of the entire story is how simple the scam actually was underneath all the luxury. Simon did not rely on advanced hacking or complicated financial systems. Instead, he manipulated emotions. The private jets created excitement, the bodyguards created importance, the luxury lifestyle created legitimacy, and the emergencies created panic. By the time money entered the conversation, many victims already felt emotionally attached to him. That emotional attachment overpowered logic, and that is exactly why the Tinder Swindler story continues to disturb so many people today. It forces people to confront an uncomfortable truth about trust, loneliness, and human psychology in the age of social media. Because in a world where luxury can be rented, identities can be invented, and relationships can begin through a phone screen, appearances can become dangerously convincing. The billionaire businessman never really existed. The glamorous lifestyle was largely an illusion, and the romantic future he promised his victims was nothing more than another part of the performance. Yet for the women involved, the consequences were painfully real. The most disturbing part is that Simon understood human psychology better than technology. He knew how to create urgency, excitement, trust, and emotional dependence, and that combination allowed him to manipulate intelligent people over and over again for years. If you found this story eye-opening, don't forget to like and subscribe for more real-life cases like this, because the next one might be closer than you think.